Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and always I'm joined by this nerd all the way over there today, and we have a special guest. DM Scotty from the DM's
Hey!
Craft is in the house.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be at your table.
thanks for popping in. Today we're gonna be talking about pretty much turning anything into a D&D adventure. I'm pretty sure that's a thing we all have a little bit of experience with.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, definitely.
And even more so, I felt like it was a good thing to talk about, considering the quest givers, which you are a part of, and Ted has actually helped you guys out with some writing in the past. Has a Kickstarter going on right now, and where you guys write these really cool, in-depth, generic adventures. I say generic in the sense that they're not.
System agnostic.
Yes, system agnostic. You use them for anything.
And that's one of the things that I really liked. As you know, when I read the first one, which if you want to check it out before you decide to back the Kickstarter, you can head over to nerdarchy.com and you can actually get one for free that I've gone ahead and written all of the stats, mechanics, what have you, for 5th edition, so that you can be able to just take it and use it for your D&D game. And if you like it, you can then head over to the Kickstarter page, back it, and get your wonderful copy.
Slight correction: it is not for free. It is. You can also get it at quest givers as well for the same price.
Oh, my apologies.
They're gonna run over and be like, Ted lied to me.
What are you talking about?
That bastard. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Scotty? And it's kind of the reverse of turning anything into a D&D adventure. In this case, you're turning any adventure for any game. So what's that process like when you guys decided to come up with this, and you decided that you weren't going to focus on one particular system?
Right. We didn't want to focus on one system because we didn't want it just branded as, because I think if you put that 5e brand, I mean, that's the biggie right there, but then other people feel like, oh, I can't necessarily use this for my game. And 5e adventures that Wizards puts out tend to be written around kind of monster encounters, so the monster's very specific to D&D. And we wanted to avoid that kind of thing so that anybody could run, because these are monsters that aren't no one's familiar with. They're not going to be like your standard orcs and goblins and that kind of thing. They're all unique monsters that are in the modules, and that's fun. And we really wanted people to feel like, I can use this for my system, because there's some great games out there that just don't have a lot of material, a lot of backup material. D&D has tons and tons of modules, years and years and tons of modules you can get. But some other newer systems, it's harder to find material for them. So we wanted to be kind of fill that void of material that people could use for any game. And that's why we kept it system neutral.
So is there anything that you felt like of systems that you're familiar with that this wouldn't work for, or is it really going to work for anything?
It'll work for anything. I've run it with Index Card RPG, which is like Hanker and Furnell's system. Great system. I've run it with that. You can run it with rules light systems as well as rules heavy. We've had different people run it with different systems, even do it like a Star Wars adventure. So kind of make it in space. That's fun. So yeah, just really, I think it can go with, I mean, if you can make it work for Star Wars, you can, if it's a fantasy campaign and you can make it work for Star Wars, I think you can pretty much make it work for anything, because the ideas in the modules like easily translate to any system anywhere.
That is really cool to hear.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure, you ran most of or a portion of one of these on Jake's channel, Brain Domain, quite a ways back. So I thought that was a lot of fun to really get in there and see what that was like.
Now, Scotty, most of your gaming D&D, or you play a lot of different systems?
I do mostly play D&D because that's what my group's like, and that's fine. But I have ventured into other systems like Monty Cook's system. I played some strange games, and I play ICRPG, and I played other games. But the majority of what I play is D&D, and I'm actually running the campaign right now for a group of D&Ders because my friend came to visit from college, and he's like, please run me a D&D adventure. So I ran a one shot, and he was just, oh, this was so fun. Can we like continue this? So we're like, okay, well, let's do it online. We'll do an online game, and we started an online game, and I'm running quest givers for them, and they're just having a blast with it. So it's a lot of fun, and yeah, and using some of Ted's stats actually in the game.
Well, hopefully everything's working out for you.
Oh yeah, we've had a blast.
They're not dead yet.
No, not yet.
So I feel like we've all run probably a lot of D&D. I know from having a previous conversation with you, Scotty, that you prefer to run games than play them. Matter of fact, you told me you were a terrible player and much better DM, if I remember correctly. So with that, I know personally I have taken tons of inspiration and taking stories that aren't even particularly fantasy stories and turned them into D&D games. Like for St. Patty's Day, like we got partially through the session, and one of the players was like, "You're running the Leprechaun movie, right? The really bad movie from the 90s or 80s or whenever that movie came out." Like, yeah, I am.
Yeah, I'm running a straw campaign with a group, and I put a whole scenario in there for St. Patty's Day with a red cap, and so it was kind of the St. Patty's Day theme kind of idea, except I used a red cap instead of a leprechaun. So yeah, it's fun how those ideas can seep into your games, and it's the storytelling that we see every day, we see on movies, we see on television, and that seeps into your games. And I think it actually makes it richer, because if people recognize things, or at least the themes of things, those themes are true. They're true. Like the Joseph Campbell, the myth, the whole idea of the myths and everything. It's people want to hear those stories, and they love those stories, and there's something in us that speaks to those stories. And so it's just great to be at the table and be able to do it collectively, do it as a group.
So there's a couple different things on that. Number one, that they say that everything, every story has really been written. It's just, what is your take on it? What is your, what makes yours slightly different? But it's like, man versus beast, man versus machine, man versus himself. Like that. Those are basically, it. So like if you're not, like you got to find something that's really off the, really out there to do something that's different. Nerdarchy has said from the very beginning, steal from everywhere. And I am such the D&D nerd that pretty much no matter what I'm doing, when I'm taking in a form of entertainment, books, movies, TV, what have you, I am always trying to see like, all right, what can I do here? I've actually got a note thing on my phone. When my family went to the aquarium, I'm like, oh, okay, I got some ideas here. And I started this whole, like, let me just start creating this aquatic area or aquatic adventure that I'm going to put together at some point in time, because that's where I was at, my brain. So, take from everywhere, steal from everywhere, get inspired from everywhere, because you never know where the smallest little bit of spark is going to take you.
Yeah, my brother was kind of notorious for taking like the old Rutenbass cartoons, holiday specials, and turning those into adventures. I don't remember if it was him or if it was Psycho that did the Little Shop of Horrors. One of them did, and then one of them also did kind of spoof adventure based off of. I don't know if you remember the DVD series they would advertise, When Nature Attacks or Nature Gone Wild or whatever. And so you can get inspiration from pretty much anywheres, and it doesn't have to be in the genre. It's just taking those things, and it's like you said, I think when your players are running through the adventure and they finally get what you did, you know, there's that Easter egg moment, you know, and you see it in their eyes, like they light up and go, oh, and you know, I've never had someone go, oh, you stole this from that, and with a negative connotation. They're like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's that, you know, that nod of you know, nerdism, or that nod of respect of like, hey, I see what you did there. I like that, and to me that's kind of cool. I mean, I was literally just last night, you know, after our Patreon chat, I watched a couple episodes of Star Trek with the wife. I've watched everything else, so I resigned myself to watch the originals, and I watched an episode where like there was a transporter malfunction, and you know there were two Kirks, and my brain decided, okay, you know, replace transporter with teleport, and you can do this kind of stuff without a problem. So my brain just started going down, and I've got a whole iteration of, you know, creatures and things that have all happened because of this thing, because of just, you know, a single episode of Star Trek, something that, you know, I wouldn't think, you know, would normally be a inspiration for D&D, because it's so technology based, because it's so futuristic. But at its core, Star Trek is about exploring, so I think it fits.
No, absolutely. I mean, what is advanced science beyond our ken? You know, what really is the difference between that and magic at a certain point?
So Doug and I had a, you know, 20-minute conversation about, you know, that episode and how we would extrapolate stuff. And at some point in time, when I've got a, you know, spare time, I will begin creating that kind of stuff to do something with eventually.
We were talking about, you know, stealing stuff from other materials or that people will recognize. Well, in the first module of the North Road series, it's in the campaign book that the Kickstarter is. There's this large woman that comes to town. She's a tax collector. Her name is Zurga, and she's like off of Jabba the Hutt. Like, the idea is like she's Jabba the Hutt, and she has like this little pet that's called a warp ferret. That's just like super dangerous. You know, it's essentially like can warp in you and like alien eat its way out, right? And the players are just terrified of this thing. So, you know, that was the idea for her, was like the whole Jabba the Hutt, you know, the creature.
Yes, I remember that warp ferret.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat here, Dave. How would you turn a travel cooking show into a D&D adventure?
Oh, that's easy. I would just watch Ingest Quest on the Nerdarchy channel, run by Nerder Doug.
Strange that he's the one that asked that question, though. Does he forget his own adventure?
Maybe. He needs a little help with that one. Doug, can you help Doug out, please?
And, you know, another thing, you were asking earlier, David, about, you know, how Gareth and I come up with our ideas. Well, we're very like-minded in, you know, like what our likes and dislikes and, you know, that kind of thing. But what I find really works great when you're coming up with an adventure is to bounce it off somebody else. So it's great if you know another player from another game, or particularly a DM or GM. When you bounce ideas off them, they come back and they get better and better, and finally, you know, there's that eureka moment where we've got the idea. And that's what Gareth and I do, essentially. We just, you know, bounce ideas off of each other until we like what happens, you know. And nothing goes in these modules that we don't both like. It's not like, oh, okay, Gareth liked that idea and I don't really like it, but I'll just let him, you know, put it in there or whatever. Like, we both have to like the idea and agree to it before we put it in there. So I think the ideas just get better and better when you do that. And also, Gareth and I are going to do, we did one last Friday, but this coming Saturday, we're going to do a callback to the Crafters Tavern when we first did live streams for the craft. And AJ is going to join us from New Zealand. So we're going to have AJ, Gareth, and I, all in different countries, talking about making an adventure. We're going to make a horror. We're just going to make, in an hour, we're going to make a horror cowboy, you know, adventure, a Wild West horror adventure. Last Friday, we made a sci-fi adventure just in an hour. We hashed ideas off each other, took suggestions from the chat, and, you know, modified them, added them in, and just came up with a fantastic adventure in an hour. You know, it's just so that's a great thing if you have other friends that you can bounce ideas off, because I just get better as they come back. I feel.
Yeah, anytime you can mastermind ideas of anything really with one or more people, it definitely increases. The collective is always better and greater than the sum of its parts.
And that's what I feel so great about role-playing games, because you're getting the whole collective of the table bouncing their ideas back at you, and you're bouncing them at them, and it just makes such a great. There's like no experience like it. There really isn't.
Yeah, at a good table anyway. I remember some of our earlier days that was not the case.
I've been a part of tables that have truly sucked before you learn proper mechanics and before you've got the capacity to really understand what the idea of the game is. But I mean, you all have to start somewhere.
But yeah, and that to that, like, you're right. Playing tabletop role playing games, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or Gamma World or Star Frontiers or Boot Hill, is a collaborative experience that you can't really get any other way. Like, even like the closest you can get to it is like playing a board game, except for you don't have the freedom that you do with RPGs. I guess now maybe MMOs, but I still don't feel the same connection, even if you're doing a voice chat with other people, that you do when you sit at a table with a bunch of people and, spill your Mountain Dew on their character sheet and slop your pizza around.
Even your best MMO still does not have the freedom that a tabletop role-playing game, are possible, can do, because they can't possibly code every option that's out there. It's just not feasible. You can code a lot of stuff, but okay, well, all right, well, what happens if that general potion merchant, what if you decide you want to seduce them? Okay, have they written a code for that? All right, doubtful the generic NPC is going to have the seduce option. Well, that's nothing to stop you in the tabletop role-playing game, short of the DM saying, I don't do that at my table.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing a bard, isn't it like required or something? That all the memes would lead me to believe that you can't possibly do it.
They're apparently D&D-izing Scooby-Doo in the chat.
Oh, there's no need. We've already done that. It's on the channel someplace.
I have a friend in my games that is his bard always hits on my wife's characters. It's just like, you don't mind, do you? I'm like, no, I think it's funny.
But let me warn you, if you roll too high, you actually have to take her with you when you leave. The stakes just got real.
Yeah. And we were talking about, just a minute ago, we were talking about, how some games cannot be great. I've found that if you have a bad DM or game master, your game is kind of doomed. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
well,
it's really hard to have a good game when you have a bad.
I've seen games where if the players have a stronger personality than the GM and the GM is doing poorly, the characters can still have fun if they interact with each other. And,
that's true. That's true.
I have seen that to some extent. And let's face it, sometimes people can be a-holes, and I recall a game where the players we were not in line with what the DM wanted to do, and we had fun despite what the DM was trying to do.
But yeah, the DM should have went along with you and not try to fight you on it. But I find that if you bring the energy, if you're really trying to make the game work, even not great players are going to have a good time,
Right.
So I think if you're an energetic GM and really care about what you're doing and really put your heart into it, you're going to have a decent game and most likely a good game.
I would agree. The story I was talking about, the GM was running a pre-printed adventure, and he was stuck on what was in the book and was not willing to go off script, and therefore you had to think of like, oh no, you can't kill this thing.
You got to give the players agency.
You're not even allowed to try.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I mean, I was in our youth, and this is somebody who was 3 or 4 years younger than I was. So, I definitely understand DM like, oh, I really love this adventure. I wanna run it for you guys, and we were just jerks. So
Yeah, that sounds accurate, especially in the last part. So, what do you think the weirdest place is either of you have drawn inspiration from and turned into a D&D game, either accidentally or intentionally?
I have watched or do watch a lot of kids shows. My kids are 7 and 11 at this point in time, so I've created adventures as well as monsters as inspired from things in the kids shows. So that's probably the weirdest for me.
Yeah, I don't know. All my games are weird, so. But I don't know if there's. It all kind of blends together, I don't. It's not like it's usually not. I'm grabbing like a large chunk of something and I'm just slapping a fantasy thing on it or whatever. It's usually all these different sources that come into it and maybe blend and make something different. So it's really I kind of a warped sense of humor and just a warped sense actually, and I feel that all the stuff I take in just really it blends together. So I don't know if there's any like one thing that I've just been totally influenced by that actually became a game of that.
For me, I think it's got to be bathing. I had a group of players that after our hard combat, they wanted to go back to the tavern and pay for a hot bath, which turned into them going, this town really needs a bathhouse, and which turned into them opening a bathhouse. So
that's fun.
Which is although you know what, I don't my brother's in the chat and he just mentioned something about ogre, and then now it's like, oh no, now we need to create a Revenge of the Nerds game. Wait, they're all goblins except for ogre, of course. Ogre will be an ogre.
Are they goblin wizards or goblin spellcasters of some kind?
They could be, but they don't have to be.
I'm going to do a quick plug for Ted and I. If you don't know, we're actually in a game together on Mini Terrain Domain's channel, his Twitch channel, and we're in a group called the Dawnbringers. So it's a fun watch if you have Thursday nights free, or watch them later on Twitch or YouTube. Then you can enjoy our exploits of adventuring.
Ooh. Also, in the description as well as the pinned post, and periodically throughout this stream here, I've been dropping the Kickstarter links so you folks can go check that out and take a look. Go pledge while you still can. I think that's a little bit of time.
I really appreciate it.
All right. So while we're mentioning things, I will throw out there that this is our our weekly live chat, and down in the description below, amongst a variety of things, including that link to that amazing Kickstarter by Quest Givers, is all the stuff that Nerdarchy does on a regular basis. Whether you want to find us on social media, whether you want to go and look at our barely started Nerdarchy the Con webpage, or whether you want to see what we've done on YouTube or nerdarchy.com, our own website. There's lots of stuff for you to go and check out. After this stream is over, there's lots of stuff to keep you going.
And another thing, if you want to see how I run a game, I'm gonna be at. You guys are. Is the NerdArchy Con thing? Is that?
We've been talking about it loosely.
Okay. Because the Kickstarter, right?
Yes.
You guys did phenomenally and just great job and just wonderful material. So I'm going to be next year at the NerdArchy Con, and you can see how I run games because I'm going to haul my terrain to the game, and I'm going to be running terrain games there. So check it out. 2020. I'll see you guys there.
That'll be awesome. We're gonna have a bunch of crafters in the house.
Fantastic.
So Jeremy from Black Magic Craft will be there. V will be there.
Oh, awesome! So awesome.
I was talking on the Creature Curation Discord channel today, and one of the users over there, as well as Brian from creature creation, he was asking people if they were going to NerdArchy Con, and they were like, I don't know, when is it? And he told them the date range, and it's like, oh, I don't know, that's kind of starts on a Thursday. That's kind of weird. And it's like, no, it's in 2020, so it's gonna be a ways.
Yeah.
You got a little time to plan, right?
So you've got plenty of time to plan. So arrange your flights, your hotels, your travel, options.
Actually, it's so far out. Some of that stuff you can't even do yet. Most of it you can't. You can't actually book flights and hotel rooms over a year out.
Right.
Well, people are already beginning to to talk and to strategize and plan as best as they can. So
the list of people going so far is pretty extensive as far as YouTubers and influencers. So basically we invited all of our buddies from YouTube. Like, hey, you want to come hang out and do this thing with us? And most of them were like, sure, that sounds like fun. When is that? So Wylock's also going to be there. So nice. all your cohorts are going to be there from the Crafters Tavern.
Awesome. So awesome.
Having gamed with Warlock, I'll be Wylock, not Warlock.
Warlock, that's somebody different.
Having gamed with Wylock, it'll be actually cool to see him in person. So
it'd be cool if we could get Gareth to come back to the States for that. But I know
I'd love to. Yeah.
But I know that's a little bit tougher for him.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Being in Australia, it's a little distance.
Yeah. Well, CJ from Don't Stop Thinking's going to be there, so maybe one of them can sneak in the other's luggage.
Oh, there you go. I'll tell him to start losing weight.
Yeah.
Start dieting now.
In order to get into someone else's luggage, you got to lose an awful lot of weight.
That's right. Do your yoga and lose a lot of weight.
Because if I know correctly, Gareth is not actually a small man.
No.
I don't know. Everyone is like this big when I see them. So.
Right. I don't know exactly.
Now he stands up next to that bookshelf, and
that's true.
That kind of gives you a bit of a size.
It could be a tiny bookshelf. You don't even know. It's like a 3 foot. It's like a 3 foot bookshelf.
Wrapped in a small bookshelf.
That is true.
It could be anything.
He's 4 foot tall, but everything has been just crafted, specifically to make it look like it's normal, and then he is huge.
So I have a question for you guys. If you were, I know you guys aren't big on modules, but if you were going to run a module game, what is it that you look for in a module? What do you want to see in a module?
Puns. So the last thing that I ran, was Orcus Claws by Frog God Games because of the name. It was a holiday adventure, and the name just kind of grabbed me. It was like it's like an adventure for 3rd level characters. I ran it for 17th level characters.
That's quite a modification there.
Yeah, and I literally did all the modification on the fly. So,
and that's one thing about our modules too. Since they don't have stats, you can run it for any level. You could run it for 1st level. You could run it for 15th level. It doesn't matter. Because you're giving the stats to the creatures. So you can just adjust it for your group, and that's what's great. So it opens it up to so many more levels.
Do you guys do you guys give kind of tips and tricks for doing that kind of stuff?
Not necessarily for coming up with your own stats, but we do tell you what the monster does. So you can add that in. You can make the stats for it, but then give it the powers from what we say it does.
I was just gonna real quick. I just want to talk to Elfbait in the chat there because he says con starting on Thursday is weird. Question. No, that's not weird, but it is weird when they end on the Saturday or whatever when you match up the dates. So.
But to to kind of answer your question from my perspective about what I would be looking for, to me, I would look for a specific theme. You can get rescue the princess and do a dungeon crawl, but I would want more festivals or holidays, something that might be inspired by a real world event, but done in a fantasy or more thematic for the system. That I could do. Like that's the stuff that I would be looking for, because like I can plan a dungeon crawl, I can plan a go rescue the princess, but when it's like, hey, how do I plan an Easter holiday for a fantasy world where Jesus is not a thing? How do you do that? Or as Dave says, the St. Patty's Day, where he decided to do a leprechaun thing. We've done a variety of the national holidays in D&D versions, but that's not all of them.
There are so many cool adventures that have come out, and I look at it and go, wow, this looks really cool to run. And I look at this book, and it's like this thick, and I'm like, that looks like a lot of reading and prepping. And it's just not like our style so much. I mean, when we did the castle, I guess we talked about this a little bit before we got started. And when we prepped for the castle, that was the most D&D prepping I've done in a long time. And we spent months just putting stuff together. But that was we built more like the sandbox, right? It wasn't really like, here's an encounter or things of that nature. It was like, here's certain beats we want to hit. And then we did that kind of planning. Now,
sorry, go ahead.
Now, more recently, I ran a game for 19th level characters, so I was like, you know what? I think I should probably write some things down and have some ideas of what I want to do. So I spent like an hour prepping for a session, but that's not really very typical for us. I think Ted's been doing a lot more prep recently with his games because he's also incorporating a lot more like set pieces and terrain.
So the other thing of what I'm doing with what I'm doing. Very vague. The other reason for prepping more is, and I said this offline, is I've got a set timeline that I'm working with, and if I'm going to create a monster, I'd much rather take the time, create it, have it in advance, and then be able to say, well, I've got a thing now. If I want to put that into a book or do something with it, I've got that, that's out there. A lot of times I will create a monster on the fly and we'll just, what have you. In my last session that I ran for the kids, they fought 2 monsters, and I had just grabbed 2 random swamp-based minis and put them on the board. I didn't look at any book. I just like, I'll roll and see if it's good enough. This is going to do this much damage. It's going to have this many hit points, and I just wung it. And if somebody did something that I wasn't expecting, make a save. All right, well, let's roll and see what happens. If it comes close, let me think for a moment. If it's wildly low or wildly high, it passes or it fails, whatever. But when it comes to more hardcore, all right, I'm going to use this monster that I'm going to create, I think it might be worthwhile to actually do a little bit of work, put some stuff together, put some lore, put some ideas down, and be able to say, well, now that I've got this to fall back on, and I've got it saved that I can do something with later.
When we wrote the modules, I like it, you guys like talk about putting some ideas down, like plot points essentially, and the characters go through those or discover those how they like. That's how we write the modules. Like, it's not like a set, here's the railroad you got to go on, and then we kind of have plot points, and then you explore how you want, and then there's kind of an event that happens that can draw things together. But it's nice having a whole campaign set out, because then you have that nice foreshadowing. You have the things that are gonna be pertinent later on. Like in the first module, we have this drunk, and one thing we do for our modules is we actually write dialogue for the NPCs, which is unusual. Not something I've seen. But the reason I like that is because sometimes you just can't think of something witty to say or interesting, or maybe you'll forget something that was important for the adventure. If you have it written out, you can at least refer to it, even if you don't read it word for word. But anyways, there's this drunk, and he's just saying this crazy stuff, but there's little nuggets in there of like foreshadowing or information. Like, if you pay attention, you can get some really good information from just this crazy ramblings. And that might be hard to come up with on the fly, to think of all that stuff on the fly. So I like that. And we have other characters that have dialogue options, which I like, and also how we organize the module is a lot of modules are like blocks and blocks of text, right? We break it down like I would my DM notes, because when I get those kind of modules, I like put a box around it and I put a name or a note there, and I do it. So we've kind of pre-done that for you in the modules in the book. Like we've marked things that are important. This and this and this and this. So it's easy to find stuff, and you really, if you could really run this right out of the book. Like you could pick one up and run it right out of the book. It could be challenging. It's always nice to read first, at least read over it. But you could actually pick it up and go, because you've got the dialogue options there for the different NPCs. So you don't have to know the whole story for it to work. That you're going to say something wrong, or oh, that didn't fit with the story or whatever. So we tried to write these in a different way than you see in most. That's really centers around plot points and how we organize it. We want it to be easy to access for DMs, because that's exactly what I do when I get a module that's just block text. I make notes and blocks, squares around things, and say this is pertinent to this, or this is pertinent to that. So we tried to pre-do that for you.
Well, the lore and the response, options that are in that, and again, I happen to see the one that I help write pieces for. I really do like that format, so that you don't have to think on the fly. So it's definitely something that I would highly recommend. And me, who likes to actually have the books on the shelf that I can pull out and sit in front of me, it's something that I will be backing. Need to get my own copy. Highly recommend you guys do as well. But I mean, if you're more of a PDF person, like some people, that's an option as well.
Oh yes. And unlike most Kickstarters, we have the dollar option. You actually get something with the dollar option. We get one of our quick quests, so you actually get something. And there's not going to be any shipping in the U.S. I think it's $10 shipping overseas, but no shipping in the U.S. So if you get it in the U.S., it's free shipping.
Very cool.
Huh. Now I'm curious how you guys got $10 shipping outside of the U.S. I'm going to have to hunt you guys down later and talk about that, because we ship things fairly often, and we're always like, because we do a monthly giveaway. It's like spinning the wheel. It's like no UK, no Australia.
Yeah,
right.
Last night for our weekly Patreon hangout, we had showed off and talked a little bit about Descent into Avernus, and this is a book sent to us by Wizards, and we're like, what, we're gonna give this away, and rather than wait and add it into the pile, we decided, what, we're just gonna give it away. We gave it away to somebody who was in the chat last night, and it's like, just send us your address. And it was that, no whammies, stop. And thankfully, it's someone, here in the States. So, but, I've shipped to Australia, I've shipped to UK, and like, those are the biggies. When I see those, I'm like, oh, this is going to hurt.
Yeah. What's the weirdest place we've shipped to, Ted?
I'd have to look. We've shipped to a variety of places.
Ohio.
Well, Ohio is kind of weird, but
we are kind of weird here.
I've shipped a number of things out to Ohio. Returning stuff to Doug. I recently shipped a package out to you, sir, as denoted by the sticker hidden behind you over there. But I don't know. I've shipped to a couple, small countries out in out near Russia. I don't remember exactly which ones they are, but we've got
like ones where you're like, is that really a country?
But I mean, we've got fans all over the world, and it's something that is really exciting.
It's fantastic that everybody, the community is like not this little cloistered community anymore. It's like we can reach all the way across the world, and that we can essentially like virtually touch hands.
It's a global family, and
it is.
something that I love, that I'm a part of this. And like we talked about this early in the beginning, that like we started this because we're gonna have these stupid D&D conversations anyway. Let's turn on a camera and talk to the internet and share our experiences and share our advice. So many people have gotten connected, and I've met so many fantastic people online, and I've had the pleasure of meeting so many people in person at conventions and what have you, and it's just great.
Well, now we're going overseas to do D&D things, which is kind of cool, and so we're getting to meet people in their own stomping grounds.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
It is. It's amazing. It really is.
Jacob from XP to Level 3, he was just brought out to a convention in Finland, and I was watching one of the interviews that he did with the folks from the convention. He's like, "Yeah, I thought I was going to Sweden. I didn't even know where I was going, and I looked on a map, and it's like, oh, I'm so wrong and stupid." I'm not calling Jacob stupid. Jacob was calling Jacob stupid.
And I got to meet Jake for the first time, as well as a handful of other Saber Dice people, at Gen Con this year and Gen Con last year, and that was fantastic.
Then we discovered it'd be much easier if we just throw our own convention and we invite them all.
That is true.
Yeah, then you can have everyone you want. Everyone you want to hang out with.
Well, yeah, and so like the night, one of the plans is the night before the actual convention starts is we're going to have a big party with all the YouTubers and influencers we've invited. And also some of the con goers will be able to go too. I mean, that'll be a special VIP badge that we're going to offer for a limited number of folks. But I mean, it'll be really cool because in an intimate setting, you'll be able to get to hang out with, a bunch of us. And also, it is actually like an easy way for us to just throw a big party with our internet friends and hang out and get drunk. And then Ted's going to have to walk us and drive us all home because he doesn't drink. Like, Ted, if we died, it'll be on you as the non-drinker.
I'll just do what they all do. Drive everybody to one location. Oh, I need gas. Collect gas for money. Drive the next one. Oh, I need gas money.
Oh, is that the trick? Take advantage of your drunk friends.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do? That's what I heard. I've never done it, but yes, that's part and parcel of being the sober one.
Yep.
It's your punishment. You know what they say? No good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly.
That is true. I certainly can get punished for it.
So, Scotty, when does your Kickstarter wrap up?
The end of the month. So the end of this September.
Sweet. So people still have,
there's like 20 days left. Yeah.
20 days to get in on it before they're all gone. It's all gone. Mm-hmm. You also have a Quest Giver website as well.
Yes, we do. So we sell the modules on there as PDFs. We also have actually some miniatures from the adventures, like 3D printable miniatures. We have these creatures called Drex, which are like kind of these. They have like these bat faces and spines coming out of their back, and they're like little goblinoid type creatures.
You had to go and say miniatures, didn't you? Didn't you? All right.
And I've done several videos on we have this thing called a sarlacarn, which is this large bag of bile with tendrils that bursts out of the ground and tries to grab everybody and swallow them. I actually did a DM's Craft video on making it because I do pictures for the modules. I do terrain pictures and miniatures pictures for the modules. So that's something we did unique too that you don't see in modules. We actually added terrain pictures instead of just all art. We do have some art in there too, but we added terrain pictures, which is a lot of fun.
So the terrain stuff that you guys make, is that all stuff that people can find the tutorials too on how to make it?
I do have a tutorial on the Sarlacarn, and we have an adventure where there's like this troll bridge that's kind of broken, and I didn't do the whole craft on it, but I showed kind of steps that I did for it, and the final result. But yeah, there are some tutorials actually on the terrain that we've used, and a lot of it you'll notice from other videos that I've done. It's terrain from actually my huge repertoire of videos that I've done over the years. So that stuff all makes its way into those pictures.
Yeah, I imagine between the DM's Craft and DMG Info, you guys probably have a lot of that stuff already. It might be cool to do a little catalog over on the website where people can see oh, this is how we made this, then these parts of the adventure.
Oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah, that's a very cool idea.
Since you guys have already kind of done the work anyway, and then you made the pictures already, so I'd be like, oh, here's the picture, and here's the video that would teach you how to make this.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We have a few DM tools over there too. We have how to run a great game and plot hook formula, which is kind of what we use when we create the adventures. We have these ideas, these structures in mind to make a good story. And so we have those over there they're just like 99 cents each. So, it's a no-brainer. So
Crazy Hermit DM wants to know, you guys ever had a weird experience with a person at a con? So I want to say the experiences that I've had are more like people that are kind of hovering because they want to approach you, but they're not sure if they should approach you. Nothing really, really crazy. But I know the one time we were coming back from Gen Con, not this year, but the year before when we had flown out there, and it was, at the time, intern Jake, myself, and Ted, and there was this young woman in military fatigues that was just kind of hanging around and waiting, and kind of kept looking over in our direction, and finally I just asked her, hey, you need something or whatever. And she's like, oh, I wanted to say hi, but I didn't want to interrupt or whatever. And she'd been standing there for a while. But looking at her, I'm like, does not seem like our demographic at all. I think we have a lot of old dudes like us that watch, pretty much.
She was incredibly polite. She was waiting patiently. And, she just, she was a fan that wanted to say hi. And, it was cool. That was probably the weirdest experience, was just that, patiently waiting off to the side where I've had everything from, people who are willing to spend 5-10 minutes, having a conversation. And literally the one dude was at Gen Con this year, we wound up saying goodbye 3 times because he didn't want to take up more of our time, but we were waiting for somebody else.
So we weren't doing anything.
So we weren't going anywhere. There was no need, there was no pressing thing that we had to get to. And we were all just sitting down, so it wasn't a big deal. So oh, goodbye. And then one of us would say something else and the conversation would just wind up continuing. So it was kind of amusing that way. But I mean, I've gotten, handshakes, a shout I know you, and they just they keep walking. You're hey, Nerdarchy, and but there's no stop. It was just the crowds at conventions can be pretty massive, and
oh yeah,
I've gotten fist bumps and points and hugs and whatever have you, and it's just great. There's not a single experience that I would say was weird or negative, or weird in a negative context that I've had with any Nerdarchy fan. So it's pretty awesome. But I've also been spotted more often than Dave has out in the wilds, not at a convention. It was weird. I went to meet my daughter's teacher before school started last week. And lo and behold, I get into a conversation with, a kid's father. And he's like, yeah, I don't let my kid, bring his books to school. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to say. Kids usually have time to read on the bus or what have you. So I questioned him about this. It's D&D books. And I'm like, okay, look, this is a conversation to have. And so we spent about 10-15 minutes talking while the kids are exploring the room. And somehow it got to D&D videos on YouTube. And I'm like, yeah, I'm from Nerdarchy. He's like, I thought you looked familiar. And I'm like, literally right in my own town, in my daughter's classroom, there's a dude who's a Nerdarchy fan. I find him in the strangest of places.
That's fun.
I've seen some like odd encounters with other people. Like Jacob's crowd is weird because like we were walking to Gen Con and just like a random person, we would just yell at him, like just yell a noise, and then he would yell a noise back. It was almost like animals in the wild meeting, and then they do and they do this greeting, and then they keep going.
Yeah, the local wholesale club, the guy who checks your receipt, he's a Nerdarchy fan. I was in a craft store, picking up some paints and some paint supplies, and I ran into a Nerdarchy fan there, and I've done quite a bit of meeting of Nerdarchy peoples out in the wild. That's not at a convention.
I've only ever met one fan that wasn't at a convention, and they actually worked in the grocery store we go to a lot, and so it was like DM Scotty, and I was like, oh hey, so I got to meet. But the funny thing with me is when I run convention games, I'll get people who are my fans, in the games, and then I'll invariably have people that don't know who I am. They just thought the game sounded interesting or whatever and signed up for the game, and so they'll see these people talking to me, oh, DM Scotty, blah, and they're like, they're kind of confused. They're like, you don't, and they'll say they don't know who I am, and they're like, the other people are like, you don't know who DM Scotty is, and they're all.
Not everybody YouTubes. Not everybody YouTubes.
Right, exactly. So hopefully they're my fans by the end of the game, but yeah. So I've had that happen. It was funny too. The last Origins I went to, I was running a late night game. It was like a couple hour horror game, and it's like in a sewer. So it was pretty fun and fast and furious. And I just thought, oh, I won't schedule the games. I'll just set them up, just ask people if they want to play and all this kind of thing. So the first night it was kind of light. So I just went out in the walkway, and I'm just like, oh, anybody want to play, a quick couple hour horror game? And 3 guys stopped, and they're like, that sounds interesting. And I was like, yeah, it's you're in the sewer and you got to escape and all this. And as I'm trying to sell it to them, this guy walks past. He's like, DM Scotty. And they're like, their faces are like, what? Who is this guy? Because like he's obviously somebody. We don't know who he is, but he's obviously somebody. So it's like, I was like, oh, do you want to play in the game? He's like, oh, I can't. I got to go to another game. But and so after that they went in my game because they're like, he's somebody. So it must be decent. So. But we had fun, and I think I murdered them, but it was fun.
That's how it should be.
Because it was like a psycho killer type scenario, So
yeah, I don't know if it was my first Gen Con or my second that like someone had come up to me when I was just like sitting down or whatever, like, hey, can you sign my book? I'm like, sure. And then this young lady that was sitting next to us goes, huh. I've never been near someone who's asked for an autograph before. I'm like, I don't know. It's weird for me, too. I'll say.
I don't know if you've had that experience multiple times, but that kind of loosely sounds familiar. I will point out, an embarrassing story where somebody came up and started having a conversation with us on our way to Gen Con. And, they saw, I guess, nerdy atmosphere or whatever, and just started having a conversation, and I interpreted it that meant that they were a fan, and they were not. So
I saw it coming because I'd already been talking to the guy, and I just assumed nobody knows who we are, but I already been talking to him. He was going to Gen Con or whatever, and then he walked over with me, and I just saw Ted getting ready to move, and I knew where he was going, so I was like, I'm just gonna let it happen.
Yes, Dave likes having me get embarrassed or what have you, and anything for his amusement.
I'm like, you don't have to throw Ted under the bus. It looks like he's gonna throw himself under it.
It's all right. Allow me to amuse the masses and share the story with you. So it would be cool. We got a couple conversations going on here, and Fragginator looks like he's trying to get him and Elfbait to come over to NerdArchy the convention.
Yeah, crazy road trip.
I would totally support that idea, because those are my awesome online fans are friends that I would love to meet in person someday.
As I talk about awesome road trip for those two, I immediately picture them both as Muppets. Yeah, and because I know what they both look like too, I'm like, yep, they'd make good Muppets.
Yeah, see, now I'm now envisioning, forget the puppets. I think Frag either had or has a motorcycle, and Elfbait's kind of a big guy, so I imagine Frag riding the motorcycle with Elfbait sitting behind him.
Okay, now just imagine them as Muppets. It'll be so much better. Can someone fan art this?
Right, I know we need Muppets.
Oh, Ryan's in the chat. Ryan, I need you to make your dolls of Fragginator and Elfbait on a motorcycle road tripping to NerdArchy Con.
So again, the old motorcycle with the flag hanging off the back. NerdArchy Con or bust.
Yeah. Oh man, the ridiculousness of it all. So we're coming up on the end here. Is there anything we have to talk about that we're supposed to talk about that we haven't talked about?
I got a game later this month. I've not gotten enough replies, so I will be, reaching out. We can talk about this here. Doug has volunteered to kind of join the rotation for fan games. So, fans, you can weigh in on this. Dave, you can weigh in on it, or whether it should just be you and I, or, whether we should let Doug in on the rotation.
Let him.
I'm all for it.
Listen, Doug is a world-class dungeon master. We don't have to ask anybody shit about that. We will throw him in the rotation, and he can run a fan game because... Actually, he's way better, more prepared than me and you combined, I think. And not only that, you will get a real NerdArchy experience when Doug runs the game, because he uses all the stuff we make and runs that stuff, where me and Ted are a lot more spotty with that than him. Like, he will string together stuff that we've done throughout the years into one adventure.
Doug is awesome, I will say.
So...
All right. There you go. See, it's true. It's true. He even says it.
And in case anybody is wondering, there is only 415 days left until the NerdArchy the convention.
I'm not prepared. So be on the lookout for how I'm going to figure out my extra players. From the one person that I do have a response from. This is going to be as we're approaching Halloween, it's going to be a horror-esque game. I have to figure out exactly what that means, but
Well, there's all kinds of horror you could go with. I mean, there's Edgar Allan Poe style, or you could go Splatterhouse style. You get a lot of fun with that. You could just totally rip off any of the horror movies that have come out since the beginning of movies and turn that into an adventure. I kind of did almost like a Christine style adventure with you guys, and I murdered you and a fan.
You did.
So
we won, and half the party died.
The way it should be.
It's funny, when I'm prepping for my convention adventures, I love to run with terrain. So that's a part of the equation too. So I think. Because I wanted to do the last one I did was a subterranean, to the center of the earth type thing with a drill machine, right? So that became the idea, and then not only did the story build from that, but the terrain also. So that's another interesting aspect that that comes from when you get ideas like that.
Oh, I loved your dwarven icebreaker.
Oh, thank you.
That thing was super cool. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you just go to the DM's Craft YouTube channel, use the search feature right on the homepage, and look for the Dwarven Icebreaker. It's awesome. It's modular. It comes apart. You could use it if you make it, you could use it as the icebreaker that it is, or you could break it up and make it into different components of different adventures. Because there's definitely like some steampunky looking elements that would fit in different kinds of adventures.
Oh yeah, totally, totally.
So before I let you go, Scotty, I gotta ask one question. With all the stuff that you make, do you save it all? Do you find a way to store it all, or like? Does it, do you make something and use it and it has to eventually go away?
I actually store it all. I have everything I've made from the start of DM's Craft. I have a basement, so that helps. So if I didn't have a basement, but now you can see behind me here, I've got a room, my game room now, that I have all shelves just going around the room, and I've got, just tubs of stuff, clear tubs of stuff that I have, broken into different, here's doors, here's archways, here's tiles, here's, that kind of thing.
Nice.
Man, at this point, you must have so much stuff where, is it hard to find something you're looking for?
It can be. Sometimes it's like, where did I put that?
This is so much.
Yeah, it is so much. It is so much.
Well, with that, we want to thank you for coming on and hanging out with us. We'll have to have you back sometime. Go check out the Kickstarter if you haven't already.
Thank you so much.
Until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy, guys.